You hold in your ears a podcast that contains such power that it will hopefully amiably pass the next half an hour or so as I, Toby Hadoke, accentuate the positive about a Doctor Who story chosen by a friend of mine and see if I can guess their nominated best bit.
My name is David Quantick. I'm a comedy writer, mostly. I write other things and I do broadcasting. The story I am nominating is Genesis of the Daleks.
Well, welcome everybody. It's time for episode 5 of Genesis of the Daleks. And I'm going to try not to say the C word, that is, of course, cassette. Because I feel I have alienated anybody whose childhood was not spent with their very first. They were called personal in stereos in my day. That's because the music in the headphones went into your ears and didn't leak out to the annoyance of everybody else in the train carriage / tram / bus / library / shop / everywhere. And my very first personal stereo, because in those days tapes were very expensive. Even the batteries actually were very, very expensive. I remember my first one. I mean, you play a couple of sides and it would eat the batteries up because I got a cheap one, you see. And if you buy cheap, anyway, let's not get into that. But yeah, I'm not going to say the C word. I am instead going to say the Q word. Quantick, David, writer of so much brilliant satirical comedy that I feasted upon. Particularly when I was a student and developing as a comic myself. I had no idea I was going to end up being a comedian, but his name was always a welcome one on the credits, and his voice a unique and witty one. And now he's doing my podcast, extolling the virtues of the G word, Genesis of the D word, the Daleks. So without any more words or indeed letters, let's press play or select or whatever it is you would like to do. I am paused betwixt episodes 4 and 5 on the DVD of Genesis of the Daleks, and I am going to press play in 3, 2, 1. So here we are. I think I taped this off the telly a couple of times because it was repeated. In 1991, something like that, and then it was repeated later. It was repeated when I was at university, and it was repeated when I was at home. Yeah. Anyway, you'll know. You can look that up. I'm not here for the stuff you can look up. It's interesting, actually. It's a thing about sort of facts about Doctor Who and stuff like this. And when you write an obituary or something, you can make very simple mistakes because the stuff you think you'll check, the stuff that everybody knows, you just sort of put as a placeholder. And it's the stuff that you have to look up and commit to memory, the arcane stuff or the stuff slightly off the beaten track. That's the stuff you sort of tend to lodge. That's how people make simple mistakes on, otherwise, quite detailed and well-informed things, and why often, when I write an obituary, I'll submit it and then, I'll do a little look down and go, oh, no, I've got that year wrong or whatever, because when you're typing, you go, oh, yeah, the year will take care of itself in a bit when I'm checking, and then you get sort of blind to it. Anyway, but talking of mistakes, I mean, the Doctor does, yes, you go, oh, brilliant. Oh, 2000, hang on, I thought it was 2064. Well, we'll allow that. And then you go, what the... And you suddenly go, hang on, I don't know this one. Are these off-screen adventures? But, when I was first aware of this, you sort of go, oh, well, is that an adventure I don't know? Is that what happens in Power of the Daleks or whatever? Because you knew that was on Vulcan. But so I remember listening thinking, I don't think these are any actual, televised adventures. I think interesting because I mentioned the file last week, and I'm looking at the tape there and going, oh, people would go, oh, you wouldn't have it on a tape now. But of course, they can get away with any of this because it's of the attritional war and they're going back to old technology. Although, actually, unless they'd got tapes lying around, they wouldn't suddenly invent tapes if they'd had, microchips or hard disks or whatever the modern things are. My brain is undergoing a war of attrition, only backwards. I love this idea that Davros, for all his amorality, feasts knowledge, as all great scientists, even those who go off the rails, would do. And so I love this, that the fact that they're at pains because he looks like the sort of the parody of person and Dalek, this strange human Dalek centaur kind of thing. To actually sort of humanize him in terms of going, well, he's interested in conversation, he's interested in knowledge, he's cunning, all of those things, to make sure we don't lose sight of the fact that no, he is not a Dalek. He is, but he is very plausibly the person that created the Daleks. Lovely, gentle Dennis Chinnery. I've heard it suggested that Dennis Chinnery is his name is the is the basis of Dr. Chinnery, the vet for whom everything goes wrong, is the inspiration. That's the word I was looking for at sober at 8:45 in the evening, and the word inspiration was far from my grasp because my brain is atrophying. It will come to you, young people. It will come to you. Dennis Chinnery was the inspiration, the name behind Dr. Chinnery in The League of Gentlemen, played by Mark Gatiss. I do not know if that is true, but I throw it there into the mix that at least Mark Gatiss is a Doctor Who fan, so he probably would not be unaware of Dennis Chinnery, especially as this was a Doctor Who that was available to fans when other Doctor Whos weren't. Oh yes, and here's a nice scene for Tom Georgeson as Carvel, who, as I think I said last time, I was he's quite a big character in the book, and I'm thinking I don't really remember him from the TV version, and then I listened to this, the Daleks, Genesis of the Daleks cassette. I promised I wouldn't mention it, and suddenly he's in it. But he's not on the cast list. Bottom of the cast list is Dennis Chinnery, and the cast is in order of appearance. That's very nice, that cutaway just before he clunks him on the head. But Tom Georgeson does feature. There's a scene coming up with Carvel and Garman, which I'll talk about when we get to it, because it has ramifications, and it leads to a fact I've only recently learnt. Michael Wisher is so good casting. I believe I've read that they offered it to Roy Skelton, who's a good actor, but I think you'd be hard pressed to do what Wisher has done here, and I always think of Wisher as this sort of efficient clipped, whereas Skelton I see as more sort of has more aptitude for the sort of high-pitched, on the edge of terror, slightly psychotic, I think. And of course, anyway, this is one of the great scenes of Doctor Who. And I remember talking to a friend of mine when they were preparing the documentary for the 50th anniversary, and him saying that he showed that, and it had loads of clips from New Who. And he was trying to get some clips in from old Who, and he showed this to the producers, and they thought it was rubbish. And it did make me think, why did those producers get the job of making the documentary? You have to pitch for stuff now. Why did the BBC give the job to some people who couldn't read? I'm not saying that everybody who grew up with modern television would communicate to them in the way that it does to people of my generation who see past the style of production and that sort of thing. But this is excellent. Actually, bugger that. This is excellent, whoever you are. And if you can't see that, I query why people are making that got the job making that program if they don't have a sympathy with a large chunk of the source material. And it strikes me as a really odd decision for sort of brand Doctor Who to go, do you hate half of the program that we're making? Have you not even seen? Yeah, well, I find that extraordinary. Anyway, I'm supposed to be accentuating the positive, but it's an element of modern television that baffles me, that there is so many people with actually a passion for Doctor Who or any other subject who do not end up making sort of, or discussing or commentating or making programs about that subject, and yet there are people with scant knowledge but who are media people who get to sort of approach freshly a subject they have no knowledge of. I find that, or as I say, even a dislike for. There's nothing wrong with disliking Doctor Who, but I don't think you should be the Doctor Who people should give you the reins of a documentary about the program just because you happen to be, you happen to drink in the right corner of the ivy. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked by a frustration I have with the way things are these days, and talking through one of the greatest scenes in the whole of Doctor Who just goes to show how annoying things can be if you're not careful. And the whole point of this podcast is to let all stuff, because it doesn't matter. In the long run, it doesn't matter, because this still stands, and it's interesting, that thing about what other people think is not important, and there are enough people that will celebrate this throughout time, because it is one of the great moments of Doctor Who, and I think will always be watched, and it's just a great summary of what the Doctor stands for and what Davros stands for, and it's a brilliant face-off between two brilliant actors, and it's brilliantly written because both of them are given very plausible arguments, and of course it's a thematic face-off between what the Doctor's doing, and the Doctor has to make, the Doctor's not just doing angelic stuff, he's considering the genocide of a species. He's got some very difficult moral choices to make, and Davros has some choices to make about how to ensure that his species survives, and he's made some pretty uncompromising decisions, and it's embodied in that brilliant scene. And that power would set me up above the gods. There's going to be exterminated Thal, who's going to die in a lot of pain now because the laser beams really hurt. So yeah, I think the extras were instructed to go, this is just really killing you a lot. And look at the smoke. It's just these, the Thal Dome is a couple of corridors in a room. But they've done it well. But you can hear the fire crackling. But yeah, that power would set me up above the gods speech. That was the cliffhanger that I inserted into my backup safety copy. Isn't that the Thal we've just seen killed? I think it is. Although they do, there are a lot of similarly blonde types. I bet David Biller is one of them, because he was a very blonde extra who passed away last year, I think, who you suddenly go, if you're on the lookout for him. He's one of the Time Lords technicians in episode 10 of the War Games, the blonde one. And once you've spotted him, he's in the background of the Green Death. You go, oh, yeah, it's that guy. But yes, my false cliffhanger that I inserted was that speech. And I used to play Davros on stage in a sketch show called the Unbroadcastable Radio Show. And whatever Davros was doing, he had a different job every week. He ended up building to a speech that ended in that power would set me up above the gods, and my face would go red, and it would always get a round of applause. So this is the scene in the cassette where Carvel has lines. I remember going, oh, he's actually in it, but it took me a while to realise, because he only says 2 or 3 things, and you go, oh, that is why. So Tom Georgeson doesn't have a credit. So I thought, well, that'd be interesting, because I should tell him at some point if I ever encounter him at signing, go, because you've not got a credit, they might not have realised you're in it, which means you're not getting any of the royalties for it. And there's no better way to please an actor than to tell them that they're due some repeat payments or whatever. But then there was an article very recently in one of the Doctor Who magazine specials saying that actually Tom Georgeson's agent never replied when they sent him for clearances. So they released it anyway and just didn't put his name on the packaging. So I wonder still if to this day Tom Georgeson doesn't know that he's actually featured on the cassette, and because his agent was either negligent or lazy or didn't notice, if he's due probably quite a serious accumulation of cash. Now here's a scene I remember going, oh well, this isn't in the cassette, and I don't remember it from any of the repeats. And Terry Walsh and Alan Chun's there. They both are having a scrap, are both in it. So basically, this is going to be a protracted fight scene. This is entirely unnecessary. Nice corridor sets though, and it's a decent fight. And I think it's there to show that Garman, abhors death. It sets him up as the opposite of Davros. We will not kill. A stupid waste of life. Okay. It's a very handy illustration, but we can also live without it. But it's a perfectly well staged scene. And they called Sten guns, those sorts of machine guns with a magazine on the side. They're always quite fun to play when you're a kid playing war. Yeah, I used to play war. So unfortunately now some people try and play war as as adults. That's when you have to worry. Again, look at this lighting. It's just look, and he's waiting in the darkness, and I love the little shake that he gives to his hand as well. He's a magnificent actor, Michael Wisher, and the fact that he is. This is what makes him a great villain, is that and again, unlike the Daleks, who seem to be reactive creatures, do you know what I mean? The Dalek sees a thing and it exterminates. I know not always, as I say, they're very cunning in the writing of David Whittaker. And it's because without Davros, they can be cunning themselves, but they become much more ciphers to him after this. But this is so sort of fresh to have, and I love the fact he doesn't even tell Nyder, and it's good because you never quite. I mean, Nyder is loyal to the end, but he tests him, doesn't he? And in a way, that's very, very. Commendable in a way, is that Davros, Nyder has many reasons to sort of go, I'm backing out this chum, and he doesn't, because he believes fervently in Davros's mission. And that's a fantastic mask that he has. Look at Tom Baker. I mean, I love this outfit that he has. He's got a cravat and a scarf, and I really like that jacket with the patches. And so he's just about to find a change. This is the really odd bit where they go halfway through. They go, "Yes, Sarah, I think you need a change of gear." Okay, then I'll change into these combat pants, which is pretty much. Is that what happens now? I'm pretty certain they. But I do like that outfit for Sarah, the combat outfit for Sarah that she then wears in the next few episodes, and indeed the next adventure. Explosives. So this is building up to, because while all the politicking is going on, the Doctor has. I mean, he doesn't see Davros again, does he? Oh, I remember this. The Time Lord gave me 3 options. Only one of them still open. Genocide. That seems such a grown-up thing to say. And I remember when the Doctor was charged with genocide in at the end of Trial of a Time Lord episode 12, I remember saying to my brother, the Doctor's been charged with genocide, because genocide is, it's a terrible thing, but in terms of in a drama when you're a kid, it's a word that makes what they're doing, the stakes seem extremely high. And I'm having to say to my mum, what does genocide mean? He said it's the destruction of a whole species, and you go, God, it doesn't get much worse than that. And it's the fact that it's the Doctor that's saying it. And he's saying, the Time Lord gave me 3 options, and this is now the last resort. He's not doing this glibly, and yet he's sometimes this Doctor is very glib and breezy, but Tom Baker has the requisite dramatic heft to really sell the idea that the Doctor's doing something with grim determination that he's got no choice to do. Now, Carvel, of course, as well as having had lines that he doesn't get credits for, this is his last episode. Well, I don't know when we get our last glimpse of him, but he's not in episode 6, so I don't know if he goes to the loo, and then when he comes back, everyone's been killed. He goes, you better go away now. There he is. And of course, they do their best here, but the whole of the Dalek project better work, because the entire staff of the bunker are middle-aged guys. So I don't know what Garman's great plan is, unless, as I say, other members of the elite are sequestered elsewhere. Of course, this happens in so much of this television, where a group of 5 or 6 people is supposed to represent a whole movement / society / planet. And I think we just get used to that. It's the grammar of watching these sorts of shows at these sorts of times. Look at that tapping finger. I think that's a great thing, and it really ups the tension, because you sort of go, well, I don't really trust Davros, but also because I think Dennis Chinnery's done such a good job of being such a sort of gentle, hero type. You don't quite believe that those guys aren't going to win, because Doctor Who stories are one. That's the other thing that's extraordinary about this story, is that actually the Doctor's mission is really doomed to failure. And I know he sort of says, he's affected it by 50,000 years or whatever it is he says, but he says it's no more than that, but he doesn't, he has no material impact. He doesn't do what the Time Lords wanted him to do, because for the rest of the series, and forevermore, the Daleks are still doing what they do and killing as they kill and all of that. But he's going to say, I want to speak to the whole elite. Is it a full meeting of the elite, and it's all blokes. It's if anything dates it, it's that. Never mind the odd haircut or the odd pair of flared trousers. It's extraordinary, isn't it, that and that didn't seem particularly strange, when I was younger, but you look at it now and go, did nobody go, well, should we have a couple of women? Do you know what I mean? Should we? But what is normal to you seems normal until you take a step away from it, Sometimes it takes, it just takes somebody else to come in and go, should we be doing this? And sometimes it just takes you to look back 10 years later and go, oh, that seems so normal, and now it doesn't. They have lost. He does that so well. Look at this. I mean, this is, really compromised in terms of production. In fact, the Dalek ground to a halt there. But that sky, instead of just having the white studio as the backdrop, I think the light glistening off the Daleks, and look at that. And they're almost silhouettes there. Absolutely terrific. And I suppose one of the things the Doctor set back in the development of the Daleks is that the Daleks, when he first meets them in the first Dalek story, can only move off static electricity. So maybe that's one of the things he set back. So he's created his own timeline. I don't really know how timelines work. I don't really care, because you can. I'm not that bothered about sort of rationalising things too much. All the things that happen in the series happen, and they work. Now, if there's something that out and out contradicts something, it is a bit annoying. But I don't see a need to sort of tie this up with how this fits into the Hartnell stories or the Troughton stories or whatever, because they stand on their own 2 feet as what they are. And if Carvel is the Emperor Dalek because he went out for a piss and fell into some pistons, I don't, you could make that case, but it's an awful waste of energy. But good luck if that's what you want to do. That's just Tom Baker in a bit of plastic and some chopped liver or whatever, and an aptitude for guttural noises and facial expressions that really sell all of that stuff. Good for him. Garman's going to go sink down to the... But yeah, so he actually highest on the credits when he has the least to do. There we go. Doesn't matter. So that is the end of episode 5 of Genesis of the Daleks. I'm going to have to choose my favourite thing, and I'm sorry I sort of got into one. I think it's worth clarifying, I am not one of those... Well, I try very hard. Things annoy me, and I get frustrated. I get frustrated with television, particularly modern television, when people don't seem to care. It's a medium that so many people want to be involved with, and so many creative people want to have a go at. When I encounter people who get the opportunity to do it, who don't work really hard at it, because when you're a freelancer and a creative person, you work really hard all of the time. It always amuses me when I email somebody at the BBC at 5:31 and you get an email back saying, I am out of the office till 9 o'clock. And you go, God, I answer emails at 1 o'clock in the morning. But, I understand it's perfectly acceptable because you only get paid for the hours that you do. But that's, well done you, because there's a lot of people making programs and endeavours that aren't paid for the hours that they do at all, let alone... but anyway, I think the reason that story of the people making the documentary about Doctor Who to celebrate its 50th anniversary being so dismissive of some key elements of the show, I just thought when there's so many people, and I'm not including myself in that, there's so many people out there who can make television programs who would be really sympathetic to that material, seems really bizarre. And I do resent, as I say, nothing. I'm not bringing me into this equation at all, because I very much, I keep very productive. I throw stuff at the wall, and I hope that some of it sticks. And I certainly believe you have to make your own opportunities, and you have to make your own work. And there's nothing worse actually than on Facebook seeing friends of mine who are either creatives or Doctor Who fan creators or comedians who keep looking at what other people are doing and slagging off and going. And there's a sense of, why isn't that me doing that? And I think, just do what you do. Don't worry about what other people do. And I think you have to do that, or otherwise that way madness lies, or you look a little bit bitter, and that's not a good look. And it's not a good thing to succumb to, because how we are is sorry to get zen like this, is a state of mind. And I've got as many frustrations as anybody, but to let the one's ambition or bitterness or missed opportunities consumes one goes against any creativity you might then want to exhibit. And the other thing is, people might be doing stuff that you don't like, but they've also had to work very hard, and they are doing the best with the opportunities that they get. So if there's a comedian that you don't like, they haven't nicked your spot. They're just doing what they do. And if you don't think they're any good, that's fine. That doesn't matter. But they're what the buyer wants. They're what the market wants. They're what the whoever's working and making those programs at the moment wants. And if it's not you, you have to give people a reason to make it you. But that is not the same as, I think, people sort of... there's an industry of television looking at itself disdainfully. And I think it's a really odd business to be in, to be looking to treat the medium that you work in, that so many people are desperate to work in and love and have an aptitude for, and be slightly dismissive of it. Because you think, well, what are you doing? You're wasting your time and mine, which is why... the airwaves are filled with so much sort of stuff that you think, this is clearly people who can't be asked and don't care. And I find that really bizarre of a medium that could be fueled on love and creativity is often fueled by people doing something they don't particularly want to do or care about. And I don't quite know how we've got into that position. And that's an anathema to me. And I just got carried away talking about that because... And what did I do? I let it overshadow the absolute glee I should have been exhibiting, talking about the brilliant acting and the brilliant writing of the Davros Doctor Who scene of, if you had a file and it could destroy a life, would you use it? And Davros actually giving it genuine consideration and then getting carried away in the whole scenario and revealing himself, to be somebody who would exercise that power and getting drunk on that power, but then it being shown that actually that's a weakness because the Doctor then grabs onto him and manages. Now had the Doctor planted that seed because he knew that Davros would drop his guard? I don't think so. That's the Doctor reacting to that situation. And then, of course, when it looks like the Doctor's got the upper, excuse the pun, hand, and he does the thing with the life support system. And I think the way that Michael Wisher acts that sort of slow sort of atrophying of Davros's faculties is really, really good. And the Doctor saying, next time I press that button, it stays pressed. I mean, I could quote the whole thing. I might even. And then just as it looks like this order cannot be, then Nyder comes in and hits him on the head. And doesn't he say, what do you want done with this? So it's another great Nyder line. So that's what I should have been doing. I shouldn't have allowed myself to be consumed by fury and bitterness. Because that's the Davros side of the argument. That's what Davros does, doesn't he? He gets consumed by his hatred, and that's the two sides of that argument. And it's not to say you shouldn't feel angry at things you think are wrong, but it's how you then counter that. Do you butt against it with anger, or do you do the riposte by living the opposite? God, I worry that I'm absolutely full of. But look, I just do the best I can. My favourite thing about that episode is obviously the scene between Davros and the Doctor. That power would set me up above the God scene. One of the great scenes of Doctor Who. And if I were to make a documentary about Doctor Who, I would showcase that, and I would have people singing its praises from arsehole to breakfast time, because that would be easy to do and the people would be easy to find. Right, what does David Quantick have to say about episode 5 of Genesis of the Daleks?
Number 5. Well, the best speech in the history of Doctor Who. Do I have the right? Simply touch one wire against the other and that's it. The Daleks cease to exist. Hundreds of millions of people, thousands of generations can live without fear, in peace, and never even know the word Dalek. It was the moment when Doctor Who became a grown-up show. I can remember seeing it at the time. Suddenly it was, wow, a moral dimension. Normally, John Pertwee used to just hit people. People would run away. William Hartnell would happily destroy entire planets without a second thought. But Tom Baker was a moral philosopher. It's interesting that in this scene, Sarah Jane does the arguing. She's the one who says, no, kill them, because you think Harry would be the one to do that. He's in the Navy. He's quite used to not making moral decisions and killing lots of people, possibly. But no, it's one of the best Doctor Who moments, and the fact that it's 2 wires makes it even better. It's not an enormous sci-fi device. It's a man in a scarf with 2 wires.
Now, don't get me wrong. Unless I was talking about Tom Georgeson nipping out for a wee and missed that, I'm pretty certain that 2 wires speech is next week. And so I think, I call upon the arbitration gods. I think it's an absolutely... David is absolutely entitled to pick it, but I think I'd got my eye on picking that myself for next week, and as he's picked it for the wrong episode, I think I'm still entitled to pick it next week. Now, that doesn't harm him, because it means that the thing I've chosen for this week isn't the same as the thing he's chosen for this week, but I think that's slightly unfair, because he's chosen a thing for this week that isn't for this week. So I can still choose the 2 wires for next week and claim the point for this week, but he'll choose something else for next week, which I, of course, won't choose the same thing, because I'll have chosen the wires for this week. So I think I'm scuppered on a technicality there, but that's okay. It's because actually the competition is woefully unimportant, and if anybody is listening to keep score, that's not really the point. But I know that some people will be going, well, I think you have to get him to re-record that. I don't know why I always give a Doctor Who fan a nasal voice like this. I should perhaps make some documentary about Doctor Who, because I'm so apt to caricature people unfairly. Anyway, look, that is a great scene, but I'll talk about that next week. I stand by my choice of one of the greatest scenes in Doctor Who's history. It's a fantastic episode of Doctor Who, that. This is one of Doctor Who's greatest moments. But remember, well, you don't need me to tell you anything, but my feeling is, based on the things that I've thought about watching this episode, and based on some of the things going on at the moment, what other people think about the thing you love doesn't really matter. There's a thing now where I think some Doctor Who fans want to have a go at other Doctor Who fans about how and what they like about Doctor Who. I couldn't give a tinker's cuss what anybody else thinks about what I like about Doctor Who. And if you think my choice of what I like about a story, or my choice of my interpretation of another story is a reason to think badly of me, good luck. I couldn't give a flying monkeys what you think. And so nor should you. So if it's really interesting that I think we can read all sorts of brilliance into Doctor Who, and I think it's interesting to have intellectual discussions about whether we think an episode of Doctor Who is pushing this agenda or pushing that agenda and all of that sort of thing. But if we come to different conclusions from each other, that doesn't mean anyone's a better or a worse fan. And actually, if you even have a hankering to be a better fan than somebody else, I think you're quite a ludicrous person, because we create Doctor Who in our own image, and that does nobody any harm. Like the actor Paul Eddington said when they said what did he want his obituary to be, and he said he did very little harm, and I think that's often more valuable than a righteous crusade. I don't know why I've got I think it's because I perhaps had a little righteous crusade of my own, and I felt bad about it, because it's actually a spectacular waste of energy. Even though it felt so important at the time, and all of that came bubbling up when I started talking about it again. But it stopped me from being in a happy time and place. It made me in a grumpy time and place. And this is not what this podcast is called. So therefore, hopefully, having gone for a little segue into Grumpyville, we are now, as we reach the end of this episode, once again in a happy time and place. And they're good places and times to be. Goodbye.
And yeah, it says here, shamelessly plug anything you have coming up or your online presence. Well, I'm on Twitter, and on Twitter I'll be talking about my forthcoming quiz book, Quantick's Quite Difficult Quiz Book, which contains, I hope, many, many Doctor Who related rounds, including Doctor Who villain or musical instrument. I'm sure you can guess the crossover there. Thank you, Toby. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for listening to Happy Times and Places, which is presented by me, Toby Hadoke. My special guest this time around is David Quantick, who can be found on Twitter @Quantick, and avail yourself of his new book, which has been timed to coincide with the release of this podcast. No, that's the other way around. Anyway, this sort of jiggery-pokery would not be possible without the contributions of patrons, who include Edward Salt, Ashley Knight, Stephen Hill, Andrew Egan, John Elledge, Lee Kremin, David Green, Simon Coling, Trevor Smith, Nathan Martin, Hugh Davies, Ruben Herfindahl, Peter Burns, Peter Harness, Rob Leonard, Stephen Moffat, Richard Straw, David Anonymous, Jenny at Blue Box 99, Paul Carrington, Paul Cook, Peter Crocker, Rob Dawson, John Deere and Chris Dunford-Kelk. The music is by Dave Gates and the podcast artwork by Dylan Patterson. Do you want to hang around in my exclusive bunker for patrons? Well, you can do so at patreon.com/Toby Hadoke. There are tiers, not because of the woeful nature of the content, but as in, like a cake. But they start for as little as £3 a month, and you pretty much get everything there. It's an egalitarian sort of system. I'm pretty ashamed of asking people for money in the first place. So I try not to tempt you with to put too much value on what I'm tempting you with. But you can also get a 10% discount on even the £3 a month if you sign up for a year. And that just means I've got your ears for 365 days. It doesn't mean I can, visit your house or come round for Christmas or kidnap any of your relatives. I'm working on that becoming a thing, but it's frowned upon. Or you can go to kofi.com/Toby Hadoke and just chuck me a few pennies as and when you feel like it. Donations come in from there, and they are very much appreciated. But I know that times are tight financially for everybody, and you know what? I really do appreciate the fact that people listen to these and indeed send feedback. But you know what you can do? You can send feedback to Apple or to Podbean or to Spotify or wherever it is you get these podcasts, and you can leave a 5-star rating and perhaps a few lines of review, because that just helps to separate this particular Doctor Who podcast from the crowd, the vast crowd of very good Doctor Who podcasts out there. And it just means that some people that might not be aware of these get a chance to listen to them, and I'd like that very much indeed. Thanks. I'm on Twitter at Toby Hadoke. These podcasts have their own feed at Hadoke Podcasts, and I have a comedy night called Excess Malarkey that is on in Manchester every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. at the Breadshed. It's also online at twitch.tv/Excess Malarkey, live the first Sunday of every month at 8 p.m. But there's an archive of stuff up there as we speak, and the live shows stay on site for 14 days. So there's usually something out there, even if you look, right now on twitch.tv/Excess Malarkey, that gives a taster of what this award-winning 24-year-old comedy club is like. I've been doing it half of my life. So I couldn't find my keys, right? So I had to look behind the sofa and, stuck my hand in the sofa. And, I didn't find my keys, but I found that pen I'd been looking for. I found a couple of quid. And I only found Carvel. That's where it was all this time. A typical. I only found it when I was looking for something else. Anyway, I sent him out on his ear. Told him he was the last survivor of his kind. Didn't look happy. Says he was going to train to be a policeman, and with a particular interest in traffic violations on the Barnet bypass. Well, I can't see that happening myself.